Yo, let's talk about 2 heat press accessories that I highly recommend. What's happening, everybody? Boy Big Brando, and today let's talk about my non-stick cover and my base cover. Now, whenever you guys see me pressing t-shirts on Instagram or TikTok, I get comments asking, hey, what's that thing on the bottom of your press and what's that thing on the top of your press? These are 2 things that I highly recommend. I use them personally, and I want to explain why I use these 2 items, because it comes down to personal preference. There's a lot of people out there that don't feel that they need either of these 2 items. So I wanted to explain why I use these 2 items, and that way you can figure out if it's for you or if it's not for you. And just because I use it, it doesn't mean that you need to use it. These are just things that make my life a whole lot easier. All right, first, let's start with the non-stick cover. This thing right here fits like a bed sheet. This is just elastic. You kind of just pull it over, you bring this part over, and it's snug as a bug on this thing. All the way around, keeps it nice and tight. And now you no longer have to use a regular Teflon sheet to lay down whenever you're using any type of film transfer. When I say film transfer, I'm talking about any DTF transfer, any transfer with a clear film. So what ends up happening with that film transfer is when you press it, the clear film creates a lot of static depending on the humidity in your room. There could be a lot of static created with the film. So as you press this down, the backing of the film could get stuck to the top of the heat platen. So I use the non-stick cover strictly to buffer out the static. If this cover was not here and it was just the press, the film would get stuck to the top, and then I would have to either scrape it off or it starts to melt on there. So I hate having to deal with that. So I use these non-stick covers to buffer out the static, and that is all. It doesn't do anything to the heat. It doesn't do anything for scorch marks. I use it strictly for buffering out the static within this room that I'm pressing in. That's why I have these things on all of my presses, because anytime I use film transfers, I use Supacolor wearable transfers, which is printed on film. It creates a ton of static. And I started to notice that sometimes I would get bad releases because the backing of the transfer is getting stuck and it's pulling the t-shirt up. Sometimes it releases on its own and then the backing is just stuck to the top. So after that, I started using a Teflon sheet. Then it started to get very annoying where I would have to put the Teflon sheet down, press, take the Teflon sheet off, rip the backing off. I wanted to try to streamline things. So what I ended up doing was taking a regular Teflon sheet, and then I just folded it over the edges, and then I just used refrigerator magnet clips to stick it on to the sides. And then that way I didn't have to keep removing the Teflon sheet. And then Heat Press Nation released something like this where this thing fits on there perfect. Like I said, this thing fits these heat presses like a glove. I want it to be as tight as possible and I don't want it to move. And it just makes things way easier, my life easier. So anytime you use any type of film transfer, that's what I'm using this non-stick cover for. Do you need this non-stick cover? No, you could still lay down a Teflon sheet and do things the way you've already been doing it. Or like I said, get some refrigerator magnets, slap them up on the sides, and that way you don't have to remove the Teflon sheet, peel the backing off your transfer and all that good stuff. It's just eliminating unnecessary steps. All right, now let's talk about the base cover right here. Base cover fits like a bed sheet also. It's just a lot of elastic all the way around. Pull this down and it fits snug around the base bottom platen. The reason I like using this one, and I know a lot of people like to use the one that's like a non-stick cover or like a Teflon sheet base, that one's too slippery for me. When I say slippery, I mean when I put my t-shirts down, I want the t-shirt to be able to slide around, but I also want the t-shirt to kind of grip when it's stuck on the bottom platen. If this wasn't here and I was laying this down just directly onto the rubber, there's a lot of tension that the rubber and the t-shirt have when you're trying to adjust things, because the rubber is so grippy, it makes it hard to kind of maneuver the shirt. I'm barely even pulling on this thing and it's adjusting itself, right? So if I'm putting this down and I want to make sure that I'm pulling on the armpits and things are looking good and they feel good on both sides, top and bottom, this is in, right? So the base cover is holding it in place, but it's not as grippy as the rubber. So that way I can make minor adjustments. I can pull down on this side a little and it's gonna hold. I can pull on this side, it's gonna hold. If I had a Teflon cover on the bottom, if I pull down on this side, the whole t-shirt's gonna slide over because it's so slippery. Now, if I just had the regular rubber on the bottom, trying to pull down on this side is gonna be very hard because the rubber's so grippy on the t-shirt. It doesn't slide and maneuver as, like for me, when I lay these t-shirts down, I'm pulling down on the armpits right away to center everything up, good to go. Push it in and I'm pressing. I don't wanna have to sit here and try to maneuver and move the whole shirt left and right just to get it to be centered up. And I don't wanna have to deal with having that base cover that's like a Teflon sheet, kind of like this on the bottom where it's super slippery. And by the time I'm pushing it in, if my hands aren't placed in the right place, now I'm pushing the t-shirt around, I don't wanna have to deal with that. So I use this one, which is kind of like a t-shirt material. It holds and grips the t-shirt just enough, but it still keeps it nice and smooth and somewhat soft whenever I'm like making these final adjustments. So I pull it down. This side right here is not moving. I'm just pulling this side. I'm pulling this side's not moving. Everything is still in place and intact. Material under here gives it just enough of grip and just enough slickness to make minor adjustments to make sure your t-shirt is nice and straight, and by the time you push it in, this thing's not moving around. The material underneath is gripping the cotton of the t-shirt. Everything is smooth. I'm ready to press. All right, so here goes my Signature Pro. This is a 16 by 20 Heat Press Nation Signature Pro. This is the one with the shirt pressure knob. This is with no base cover, right? So whenever you're pressing anything like a film transfer, here's my transfer right here. When I say film, I'm talking about this clear film that this is printed on, right? DTF, Supacolor, there's a ton of transfers out there that are printed on film. The humidity in the room is gonna cause a lot of static within this film and the top of your heat platen. So you press this down, you have your t-shirt down, you press it, it beeps and it comes up. The static in the room is gonna make this film cling to the top of the heat press. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but for myself, there's a ton of static within this room where I'm pressing it. And it sucks when this is on a t-shirt, you lift the press up, and then it gets stuck to there. It's pulling the t-shirt with it, or sometimes it releases on its own. That to me is the worst thing, because once this is stuck and this is a hot surface, you gotta try to scrape this thing off, right? Because it's stuck with static. So you gotta try to figure out a way to get this off. And when it's on there, that sucker's really, really on there. So how I eliminated that was, I would now use a Teflon sheet, right? I'll put the Teflon sheet down, press, take the Teflon sheet off, then I'd rip the backing off, and then I'd be good to go. To eliminate this whole motion of having to take this off, put this on, I started using refrigerator magnet clips. That's what these are. That's all it is. Magnet on the back side, there's a clip. You don't even need the ones with the clip. You could just use magnets if you wanted to. So what I did is have this here. I would just clip this on, and then I do it on both sides. I don't know where my other clip is because we stopped using these, but it would be something like that, right? So now you don't have to move this at all. Teflon sheet is there. You could press, boom. It releases, bingo. You don't have to remove the Teflon sheet no more. You could peel this up and you're good to go. That always works for me. So to eliminate having this with these little clips, Heat Press Nation created the non-stick cover that fits over this thing like a bed sheet. So that's why I use it. For myself, it's just all about efficiency and what makes sense. These little clips at the time, they made sense. You could buy them on Amazon, you could get it from Target, you could get it from Walmart, wherever. All they are, refrigerator magnet clips. You could get a couple Teflon sheets or a couple non-stick covers from Heat Press Nation, Amazon, wherever you wanted to get it from. Make sure you get the ones that are a little bit bigger than your press, so then that way it'll wrap around. They come in different sizes. And they also come in like, I don't know, you could buy like 3 rolls or 4 rolls of these things for pretty cheap if you wanted to go that route. But that's the reason why I use the non-stick covers, is to eliminate having to put the Teflon sheet down, put it back on, peel it up, put it back down. That to me, wasted step. So to eliminate that step, non-stick cover, where I don't have to deal with the Teflon sheet, easy call. Now, with no base cover, most of your heat presses look like this. It's just a rubber pad on here. Most heat presses come like this. The reason I like the base cover is because when you try to lay down a t-shirt straight onto the rubber, that rubber really grips the shirt. So to make minor adjustments, very hard because you're tugging and pulling on the shirt to make those adjustments because the rubber grips so tough. This right here creates a lot of tension in between the fabric and this little base plate, the rubber on the base plate. So to make those small minor adjustments that I'm used to where I could just kind of slide the shirt over a little bit by pulling on the armpits, very hard. I notice a lot of people say the same thing when they try to use the technique of pulling down on the armpits. They're saying it's way harder for them because they don't have a base cover on. They're doing it right onto the rubber, and you can do it, but it takes some finessing. When you have the base cover, it just slides so much easier, but there's enough tension between the fabric and the base cover that you're able to make minor adjustments, but the t-shirt will still stay in its right place. Now, let's say you didn't want this and you wanted to get one of those Teflon base covers. You guys all seen them. It's like the one that's on the top of my press, but they make them for the bottom. This is a very, very slick surface. So if you have this on here, this shirt's sliding around really good because it's the nature of this. This is very, very slick. They also make like this, where it's even more slick. So if you had to put your t-shirt down on this slick surface and you're trying to make those minor adjustments, you pull the shirt a little bit this way, the whole shirt's sliding over because of how slick the Teflon base cover is. So for myself, I don't prefer the Teflon base covers. I prefer the other one that's kind of like t-shirt material. And like I said, it fits over like a bed sheet. You just slap that thing down and it makes sliding the t-shirt on. So even right here, if I'm trying to like put this on, just pulling it up, I'm pulling up the base plate or the base cover or the rubber base. I'm pulling that up as I'm pulling the t-shirt. That already creating a lot of tension in between the t-shirt and this rubber. That's just how it is. So having something to slide your t-shirt around a little bit, but still give you enough grip to hold the t-shirt in place, but still being smooth enough to maneuver the t-shirt around, only helps you out in production. Being able to lay the t-shirt down fast, line it up really fast, get to pressing. I don't want to have to sit here and start dealing with this thing just to get the t-shirt on straight. It's just going to eat into my production time, and I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. All right, there you have it. Both of these items and the heat presses shown in this video can be picked up at Heat Press Nation. I have links for everything in the description box, or you could go to Heat Press Nation on your own, look up a non-stick cover, and you can also look up the base platen cover. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think these two items are proprietary for these specific heat presses. As you can see, I have the 16x20 Signature Pro on this side, and I have the 16x20 True Spec heat press on this side, both made by Heat Press Nation. The non-stick cover fits the True Spec, and it also fits on the Signature Pro. The base cover, this base cover right here, came off of the Signature Pro press, and I put it onto the True Spec press, and it fits perfect. Now, if you don't have either of these two presses, I don't know if these items will fit your press, but I know that it fits on the Signature Series, Signature Pro, and the True Spec heat press. So if you want to check that stuff out, the links are in the description box, or just go to heatpressnation.com, look these items up, order them if they make sense to you. But once again, just because I use them does not mean that you have to use them. These items just make sense to me. Now, if you have any questions, make sure you leave it in the comments for me. It's always easier to ask the questions in the comments instead of sending me a DM or email or a private message. I see the comments first, and I'm more likely to respond to the comments more so than the DMs and the emails and stuff like that. If you wanted to see me using these two heat presses live in action, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Big Brando TV, or on TikTok, Big Brando. Catch you guys on the next one, man. Yeah.